You're welcome to the Gavel. I'm Linda Kibe. Some Nigerians are still startled and deeply disturbed by the attack on the Kuje Medium Security Custodial Center in the federal capital city on July 5th. The Boko Haram breakaway faction of Islamic State West African province ISWAP claimed responsibility for the attack, where 879 detainees escaped, including 68 imprisoned terrorists. Now, several of the escapees have been recaptured. The National Assembly is on recess, and so the matter has not been discussed at plenary. However, the Senate leadership visited the prison facility, and Senate President Ahmad Lawan bemoaned the absence of CCTV cameras in the facility. The Kuje prison attack is just one of the many terrorist activities which the country has been hit with, and not even including kidnappings and killings. What has been the National Assembly's interventions in fighting these acts of terror in the country, and have they been effective? These are the issues we'll be exploring on this week's episode of The Gavel.
It's almost a given that insecurity will be discussed at least once during plenary session every week in the Senate and House of Representatives. And this has been the case throughout the Ninth Assembly.
Every day we come here,
Lawmakers repeatedly drawing the attention of their colleagues in both chambers to killings, kidnappings, terrorist activities, communal clashes, and other criminal activities in their communities.
Nigerians are dying, and we are here to protect them. Every day we come here, we hear about dead, 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 dead. Get off for 1 minute silence, get off for 1 minute silence. It is enough. I think it is enough. Either we get a solution to it, or we don't take this person out again. But we are embarrassing the Senate and the nation.
In response to these security issues, the National Assembly has passed many resolutions, ranging from calling on security agencies to investigate and apprehend the culprits, to asking relevant agencies to rehabilitate those affected. The National Assembly has also appropriated funds in the yearly budget proposals to the Nigerian military and other security agencies to address insecurity in the country. From 2015 to date, security budgets have been on the increase, and defense budgets in the last 7 years have risen above 8 trillion naira. In 2015, the total budget for the security sector was 988.8 billion naira. In 2016, the security sector got 1.07 trillion. It got a total of 1.15 trillion in 2017. In 2018, the security sector got a total vote of 1.35 trillion naira. In 2019, it received 1.4 trillion and 1.8 trillion naira in 2022. In the 2021 budget, defense and security got 1.96 trillion naira. However, the chairman, Senate Committee on Army, Senator Ali Ndume, believes the funds budgeted for the army is inadequate.
Because of the situation we find ourselves in this country these days, where the army is drafted into unconventional war everywhere in 32 states, there is the need to really properly fund them. And therefore, there is an humongous increase in their overhead personnel, non-regular allowances as they call it. But the capital aspect of it, Mr. Chairman, is grossly inadequate. No matter what you do, if they don't have the arms, ammunition, then the war cannot be effectively prosecuted.
Besides appropriation to security agencies, on Wednesday, May 26, 2021, the House of Representatives held a 4-day National Security Summit on the multiple and complex security challenges facing the country. The 4-day summit brought together representatives of the federal, state and local governments, security policymakers, security chiefs, traditional rulers, civil society organizations and members of academia.
I agree that the solution to our insecurity as a nation will not only be by military powers alone, but also by non-military engagement and development of communities.
We are estimating something in the region of 100 billion naira per annum. Convert that to dollars, because virtually all the equipment are imported. This will go nowhere, and it will not address the problem we are seeking to address unless we expand the sources.
The Security Summit came out with several recommendations for action for the legislature and the executive. Some of the key recommendations for the legislature include to set a declassification period and process backed by law for security votes, to establish development commissions across all 6 of the country's geopolitical zones, to establish an interventionist agency to identify and provide investment and sustenance opportunities to ex-convicts, jobless youths, discharged but indigent military and paramilitary personnel, among others. To resolve legislatively the crisis of overlapping mandates among the various security-related agencies. It also came up with some recommendations for the executive to address the security crisis in the country. Instruct the immediate enhanced training for the police mobile unit to improve their capacity to deal with insecurity. To create a new team under the Nigeria Police Force to train and work with the guards of Nigeria's forests. Encourage the intelligence agencies to initiate a screening and vetting program for all frontline officers of the Nigerian military to fish out moles and double agents. To direct the use of the Nigerian Police Trust Fund to procure some of the immediate equipment needs of the rank-and-file police officers in the country. To deploy early warning systems nationwide, including installation of CCTV cameras and other surveillance satellite equipment along major highways, public places and borders. To control the flow of illegal arms into the country. The creation of local security committees in all 774 local government areas. To establish and strengthen a national crisis center within the Nigerian police. However, nearly a year later, federal lawmakers questioned the non-implementation of the recommendations of the Security Summit. However, the security crisis persists in the country despite the legislative interventions to confront the challenge.
That was a report on some of the National Assembly's interventions in finding solutions to the complex and multi-layered security problems in the country. But have they been effective and wide-reaching? We had a chat with a security expert, Mr. Kevin Fineface, to discuss this.
One thing that has come on with this administration over time as a result of insecurity is oftentimes expressing shock and promising perpetrators to be dealt with, and nobody has been dealt with yet, to the admiration of the general public. We see this in happening. We've had more than 10 jailbreaks since this administration came into power. We've had more than 10. And if we've had more than 10 jailbreaks, you wonder what happened when the first one happened, what steps were taken. Were there funds released to ensure that the place was actually well, protected, those measures that are required. The level of insecurity in the country is alarming, it's gross insecurity. You go to the northeast, north central, northwest. Even in the city of Abuja, we're no longer safe because recently we've just been some report about movement of persons around the Rosa houses. We've had the authorities going to destroy a camp in somewhere in Kwale. We've had continuous kidnap around Kuje, and even in the city of Abuja. About last week or so, we had 30 gang men armed robberies in around Wuse that took place. There's no place that you don't find one level of insecurity or the other happening. Question I oftentimes comes to my mind, what is actually going on? Is it that we don't have the capacity, our officers and men don't have the capacity to contain this threat, or that they are not being well motivated, or that there is a failure of leadership? I take it from the place of leadership. There's absolutely failure of leadership from top to bottom. I'm not using the word that is politically used, top to bottom. In this context, because where I'm from, as a fisherman also, if you want to know if the fish is bad, you don't look at the stomach, the size of the stomach. You look from the head. Once you open up the gills, it tells you if it is good or bad. So from top to bottom, there's failure of leadership. And once there's failure of leadership, what you find is that people will begin to use your initiative to want to do things. Those who are responsible at different security agencies will not be accountable as expected. Those who are supposed to be doing oversight functions are also not doing as much as expected. So when a system is not accountable, then anarchy and negligence is the order of the day. So it's a concern. And I want to believe that we will come to that place where we tell ourselves the truth to say, look, I think enough is enough. We can't also deny the fact that there are those who benefit immensely from this chaos, the insecurity that's going on. Those who are the warmongers who supply some of these things, who want to continue making money from the insecurity that's going on, either through the supply contract they're having or other factors, so they could further, contribute to its continuation. But I mean, enough is enough. We can stop all of that.
Now, let's go to the National Assembly and its role in, solving this and intervening in the security crisis. Since the beginning of the 9th Assembly, almost on a daily or weekly basis, rather, during plenary session, you see lawmakers table the security issues, drawing the attention of either the Senate or the House of Representatives to this myriad of security problems in their constituencies, and various recommendations are made by the Senate and even the House of Representatives in addressing these issues. Do you think these recommendations have been far-reaching enough?
The National Assembly has this responsibility to perform oversight functions. The essence of that is that if they've appropriated the funds, gone through the budgeting processes, appropriated the funds, and passed down to the executive, and there's, this budgetary piece has been assented on, it's expected that the monies that have been allocated for different needs, are followed up, to be sure that it is spent for the purpose for which it is actually supposed to be spent on. And if they've been doing that, then they would have actually known that the money that has been appropriated for such responsibilities have not been fully utilized. We saw the Senate President crying, expressing displeasure when he visited, the correctional facility in Kuje, that there was no CCTV working and all of those things and stuff like that. For the past how many years they've been budgeted for such? For CCTV, for other concentric measures put in place, for more hands, more recruitment of staff and all of those things. They had the tower. Were there oversight functions done to the prisons before the jailbreak? I think the answer is no. Because if they did, they would have actually known that it wasn't working. Those CCTVs were not working, and would have intervened to ensure they work. If it was because of lack of release of funds, are budgeted for, then the provision is also there, because if the law is supposed to be implemented, so if the executive fails to implement the law, the budgetary provisions as enshrined, as ascended on, then the executive needs to be punished for it. The president can be impeached for failure to implement the budget that has been passed into law. Are there steps taken to ensure that the executive is held to account based on the responsibilities? See, if they've not done that, then it means they have not really intervened as regards to CCTV. I saw them talking about, voting so much money, about 4.something trillion already been voted so far. Voting, has it been released to that amount? The amounts have been released, has it been properly followed through? Were they implemented as expected? These questions must be answered before we can give them credit for job well done. But if they can't answer this question, it means they have no business being in the National Assembly. In all honesty, I think a lot of the lawmakers fail to understand the responsibility saddled with them that Nigerians actually place on them. We all can't be at the National Assembly to go and legislate or go for motions and all of those things, so we have to send representatives. And it's sad that the Nigerian electorate have not come to understand the importance of that arm of government to ensure that only people who are credible, that have capacity, can be there to represent the people's interests. Today in Nigeria, we have people who are called leaders, but I call misfit opportunists in power, in position of authority, who basically are leading the affairs of the government, but not doing it in the interest of the people. And that is why they earn so much money and do little. And because they are not held to account, they go away with their shortcomings.
We continue with the interview with Mr. Kevin Fineface to discuss the security crisis in the country and interventions by the National Assembly.
We cannot have a country, as Nigeria is, then we have this level of gross insecurity. We saw some of them crying even in the chambers, bitterly, expressing their displeasure of what's going on with insecurity, but nobody has called the president to the National Assembly and asked him why he has failed to secure this nation. The president must not be seen as one king, and is not supposed to be above the law, above the people. The way we treat the president as if, he's a monarch, he's not a monarch. He's a servant. That's why his tenure he has a tenured office. The moment he leaves that office now, he becomes a common citizen like us. Yes, he will enjoy some perks, benefit because having served, the country. But we must start now be holding into account, not when he leaves office. No doubt about it, there's immunity that's given to the president, but there are windows with which the president can be held to account. The National Assembly is starting with the responsibility to call him, to ask him why they cannot impeach him, because he has failed. Security has failed. Hopefully, he has not shown leadership. He promised us from the beginning to lead from the front, but he hasn't done that. I think I expect the president to just resign if he actually can't do anything. In all honesty, frankly, it's not because I don't like him. It's because I'm a citizen that is pained. Friends, family members actually been victims. I've been a victim of the insecurity of this country. I've been stabbed on the street of Abuja, 4 places left to die, but thank God I didn't die. Thank God for a good Samaritan that came to my rescue. But must we continue in that direction? The answer is no. If the economy is working effectively and people are gainfully employed and empowered, then crime would have been reduced. If infrastructure put in place and we have the power system working effectively, then we have our street lights well lit up, we have the people engaged, crime would have been reduced. If the people understand the responsibility of governance and ask those who are in position of authority to be accountable, crime would have been reduced.
Beyond the issue of oversight, we've seen the National Assembly, take some proactive steps, in addressing this security challenge. For instance, both chambers have held security summits, and they came out with a wide range of recommendations to the president, to the executive, on how to address this problem. But we've seen that some of these recommendations have not actually been implemented or executed by the executive. And so what recourse does the National Assembly have, again, to compel the president, to compel the executive to implement these recommendations?
Recommendations by the National Assembly are not enforced, not like a law.
Yes.
They are just recommendations, but there are provisions, there are windows with which they can actually utilize that. If they have recommendations that can strengthen the institutions and establish in containing security in the country, insecurity in the country, then all they needed to do is to channel, their legal rights as lawmakers to see that those agencies are strengthened based on, make it a law, based on, recommendations that they have to help the country. It is when it becomes law that the president, the executive will be compelled to. Now, if the executive is failing to implement some of those recommendations, what are they doing as citizens? They can protest, join the citizens to say, look, this is not, we can't take this, enough is enough. And their constituent members are calling for the president to be impeached or to come and explain to them what he's doing, what he's not doing, and you bring in service chiefs and come and talk and brief you. They come to brief you, and those things are done. We don't see any meaningful results, So why are we not getting results? See, when I ask these questions, why are we not getting results? It shows that National Assembly has failed in the past, executive also failed in the past, employing people who are not supposed to be in those places. When you have security heads that, are solely relying on the president to hire and fire them, then it means there's going to be a problem. There's no job security. So anything that can please the president is all that they will do. We have a country where security agencies cannot even hold the president to account, cannot even call him to account because they might be fired. And that's wrong. The president must not be above the law. It should be subject to the law.
The Ninth Assembly is winding down. What can they do in this period before the expiration to address, to sort of intervene or support the executive in the fight against insecurity?
One of the first things they can do, if they show that they don't have capacity, I think they can resign and allow people who have capacity to come in. The other thing they can also do, they can't resign. No, they can. Some of them resign to pursue other interests. They can. That we have failed, but they don't have honor to resign. So what they can do is to see how they can strengthen the institutions responsible in the containment strategies of the nation. Ensure that we have a national security template that covers health, safety, and security emergency drills. Ensure we have that as a template, as a law that must be seen in all institutions, from our nursery, primary, secondary to tertiary institutions to all government agencies, that there's a template design as a national security template. Ensure that it's not just a policy of government, but it's a law that we must all inculcate. Ensure that all the security agencies' recruitment processes must be done based on merit only, devoid of ethnic or religious sentiment. Today, what we have been dealing with is that those who have been employed into some of these key positions were candidates of the politicians. Some of them don't have the merits. Some are not qualified. So we have to check our system. So if we use merits as the basis for which we do recruitment, it means that it will also help to curtail these connivance, collusions that we see. Then we must also see that the welfare and measure of the people, of the security agencies, are well taken care of. I have oftentimes, championed that you do not have any moral right to pay the National Assembly members or legislators or politicians the amount of money they earn when you pay security agencies far less. They all go to the same market. The average police officer earns far less than a councillor that have just COSAT. Then you have the president of the country that is given the lowest qualification to be made the president of the country. But for you to be a police officer, you must be a graduate. How do you reconcile such abnormality? It's preposterous, to say the least. We'll have to change all of the architecture of our system based on political recruitment, and also recruitment to security agencies. Then ensure that the salary scales of the average security officer or average security agent is at par with the politician. So if you say you have a councillor that earns 250,000 and also have access to, in 4 years he has access to car loan, housing loan, same thing should be applied to the security agency. Now, once that is done, guess what? It means that we'll weed out those who are not qualified into those places, because then the red card and the yellow card principle will be applied. You're won the first time, you're sacked the next time. People will be serious with their job. People won't compromise their job standing. People will ensure that things are done. People can go die for their, for the job for the nation. You don't have proper insurance mechanism put in place for these officers and men. They die like chickens and are roasted without any recognition and any honor. We saw how many died in Niger State that were ambushed.
Should the National Assembly revisit state police? Do you think state police is a solution?
Long overdue requirement. If we have state police, it brings down, we will now have 3 levels of policing. County policing. With the vigilantes that currently state governments are actually embarking on, you notice that they have certain limitations to function. No matter what intelligence they bring, it behoves on the police. If they want to take it or whatever they want to take it, they will do it. So we have seen also where, in some cases, the vigilantes come up with credible intelligence, even apprehend some suspects, and they are set free by the states, the federal government's policing structure, because of ethnic or religious interests. So, but if we have state police, it means every state will learn to manage their security situation. From the villages, we'll begin to have the right intelligence coming up to ensure good neighborliness is actually seen. People are punished for their crimes. Rewards are given for those who do well. So state police is needed. They fear that state police will be hijacked by the politicians. Yes. That now we're seeing what politicians do. It is because there are no system put in place to hold people to account, and it's because the electorate do not understand the power behind the voter's card. If the media will further go to educate the electorate, for them to understand that the voter's card is the most powerful tool in a democracy, the most powerful, because it's the only tool that legitimizes the office of the occupier and makes the occupier to be that powerful. Without that, nobody can be elected into a position of authority. You can't be elected, you can't be appointed without that, right? So if we now know the importance of the voter's card, here's what's going to happen. It means that we're not going to just have every Tom, Dick, and Harry to go occupy those positions. We will have people who have capacity, who are credible. We can make a difference to occupy those positions. Now, once that takes place, it means that we'll now have people who are governing us that can deliver well.
Now, this is where we call it a day on this week's edition of The Gavel. If you have any views on any of the issues discussed, please email us on thegavel@channelstv.com. Thank you for staying with us, and see you again next week.